Nijat. I'm head of product development at Lindus Health. So Lindus Health is an end-to-end clinical trial delivery company, full service, and we do call ourselves anti-CRO, which is a different topic about how we position ourselves and how we approach the business. But at the end of the day, what we do is we put teams together to deliver clinical trials, and I'll be going into a bit of detail about that. Let's set a structure to this. Maybe I should do this as well. So we're going to talk about 5 different things. I want to start with how did we get here and just describe where we think we are. As a section on why should we care, because that's important to us. Basic requirements, I'll talk about kind of more about how we work, but also highlight what it is that we need to get right before we go into the final 2, which will go a bit wide and look into the future and see what we want to achieve in Lindus Health. How did we get here? So we think it's very important for ourselves to understand where we're coming from to be able to solve some of these problems. So a quick intro of how we've thought about this. So at essence, clinical trial is just a research experiment. Of course, it's not just that, but we're supposed to know how it works, right? There's a sponsor, there's a project manager, there's a scientist, clinicians, and then they have direct access to patients, run the experiment, publish the results, and then move on. What we think sort of happened, and that's probably how they worked maybe 60, 70 years ago. What ended up happening, and specifically maybe for very good reasons, we've ended up with a lot of stakeholder bloat. Sponsors have to work with multiple CROs to do multiple type of work. Obviously, there's one site there. Sometimes you have 100, 200 sites working on a study. And all these individual stakeholders, like your project managers and your data managers and site staff, of course, I should have included statistical programmers in this diagram. They are already in this diagram not really spatially close to each other, but also the technology they use is different, and they all use their own systems. And that's definitely for a good reason, because when you, as a stakeholder at one of those blue boxes, there are very strict requirements on the jobs you need to do. So the software you're going to use will be perfectly suited for that job, but that invalidates that piece of software's ability to communicate with other systems. So of course, then you have this other side of this integrations, which is, I hope everyone knows how difficult integrations can be, or sometimes unnecessary. So this is to set the setting of how we think about this. So we think the real killer are redundancies across the board. And we see this not only in our own work, we try to fight those redundancies about that extra email, that extra report, that extra question to find out something. Time to get answers compounds, and compounding is a very annoying thing in this industry. And we've seen this on ourselves as well. The more complex trials we run, the more studies we run, the marginal effort to get to an answer keeps increasing. Maybe a bit about the anti-CRO thing. We also think the industry, particularly the CRO industry, have really, not all, but many have hidden behind elaborate pricing models, so you can slap on X amount of hours of work, and it's really hard for anyone to dig in and figure out what exactly is behind this line item. And that last statement, I don't know how controversial that might be, but at least it's something we take into account ourselves, that confidence in running successful trials is extremely low nowadays. At least that's something we use as a motivating factor. Remind ourselves not to get complacent. So let's see, that's how did we get here. Why should we care? And when I started at Lindus Health, that was my beginning in this industry, and I thought, and we talked a lot about patient experience at the very beginning, and I thought, it's great, we're thinking about this, amazing. Why is everyone talking about patient experience not being prioritized? And I saw what happened 3 years later when you have so many things to do. It's just hard to keep track. So if it's hard to keep track of the individual pieces, what sort of principles we can rely on? First of all, the first line, bringing back the personal lives and experiences. So this was relevant to me. I wonder if it's relevant to others. Where which story do I tell? The first 2 studies we ran, each individual study would have been helpful for each of my parents. But they live in a different country, and we were running the study in UK. By the time it reaches them, it's going to take a while. And more annoyingly, if you tell them about it, until a clinical trial is run on this thing, they're just not convinced. So they're going to be relying on their past experiences. From that, I think at least I understood that, I don't know if the wording works, understanding that research risk, i.e. your perceived risk of conducting this research study, creates a real bottleneck. Something that I found very surprising was that, I don't know all the details, but that there are a lot of candidate drugs that are sort of stuck post early development, and they're not selected for many good reasons to go take to a trial, because, well, I guess any pharma company will have to decide, be very strategic about which drug they send to a clinical trial, because they need to pick pick the winner. So, well, maybe I'm blocking that funnel. That bottleneck might mean more shots on goal for whether it's a pharma company or even a startup. Giving them ability to run better trials could mean more shots on goal for them. So instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, maybe you could be putting in into many baskets. Of course, that's not possible if your development costs are high, and also the burden of running the study is so high. And ultimately, if these more shots on goals and more drugs coming to market, it'll likely increase competitiveness in the pharma world, in the drug research world. But ultimately, that competitiveness can drive better treatments coming to market. Better and cheaper treatments coming to market even faster, but hopefully at lower development costs as well. So there's that good balance. Why should we care is, it's something we try to remind ourselves all the time, because once you get into the detail of, I don't know, designing a CRF, you kind of forget about that. Okay, basic requirements. Now this was meant to be a deep dive into how the company is organized, and it kind of is, but I reframed it into, before we go into those final two sections, I want to talk about what are the basic requirements for us that we need to run these trials effectively. Well, let me jump straight in, right? This is just a slide I just picked from one of our presentations. It's not, but it was meant to illustrate the number of different things the company does, and maybe an effect of just how many things you need to get right in a company like ours. And the point that I think I'm trying to make here is that we have a technology team in the company, and us and maybe others as well. There's that star-eyed sort of looking in the future perspective of like, let's automate everything, let's make everything work, let's faster and whatever. You need to get the basics right. So I want to spend this section just talking about how we approach it, because I think that sets an important scene for the rest of the talk. So we have on one side clinical operations sort of side of the company. We have trial management, medical monitoring, trial execution. We run sites inside the company as well, and also just generally people involved in executing the study. And of course, biostats and writing that we're actually moving more and more towards that. And on the other side, we have product and technology side of the company. By product, I mean product managers, product designers who build technology, software engineers who build the thing, and deployment. Deployment is I think something we're very excited about. It's just teams who get together and abstract away a lot of the work of taking technology and applying it to a clinical trial, and of course support for all the sites we work with. And if I haven't mentioned it yet, yes, we build technology to actually execute the study, and I'll be getting to that in a second. So before we get into anything fancy, we need multidisciplinary teams to get the job done. And maybe amongst all of these comments, this is the hardest one to get right. There's a tendency, a bit like I spoke about earlier, for teams to get into silos. And as we proactively fight that energy, so that when a team gets together, there is for any given study, the team broadly gets access to all sorts of knowledge, not just waiting for the task to arrive on their plate and say, I got this done. Instead, it's let's get together and figure out how we're going to make sure the study is successful. Avoiding undermining domain knowledge in the processes. Just blank statement, I think, is worth for us in our team to remember. But I just have noticed a lot of tendency to say, oh, this can be automated away. And what that leads to is potentially products and technology that go into the sufficient detail. I think in the Verisian talk, the product talk, we can show how complex that can get. Creating structural benefits to knowledge sharing. I think earlier talks, many of them have been about, well, how do these different stakeholders get to talk to each other? Sometimes you can't just like force people to go and say, hey, the medical monitor of the medical writer in the company is one Slack away from you. Even if they're one Slack message away or an email away, you don't have that much of a urge to go and find out the answer. I think Richard, you talked about asking around. So we try to create structural benefits. A lot of it is in how we organize the study teams to get together. A lot of it is in the little administrative work on how the meetings are run and how the timelines are managed. So it's very, very important for that to work right. Because if things break, they break very quickly, and you need that team to be able to get back together. And yeah, on that point, maintain an environment of high collaboration. All of those are, as I'm speaking them, they're not meant to be buzzwords about what's a good way of running a trial. They're meant to be kind of demonstration of our approach of what we try to keep in mind to make sure these systems run properly. Okay, closing the loop. So this is the part I'm most excited to talk about. So I'm going to go into, again, those big ideas, but I wanted to just pause and take a look at what essentially we've built, at least in our products and technology. So I'm just going to play this, and this is meant to demonstrate how we actually spent quite a few years to get basically the main structure of the platform right. This is what we call a trial delivery platform. It incorporates most of what we know about EDCs. It also, I think nowadays they call them direct data entry. A lot of the functionality is using sort of those assumptions, and there's layers of types of things you would see in a CTMS as well. But the reason I picked specifically this video, and I think we're sort of at the right page now, I think the most effort we put is in the schedule of activities. So maybe I'll pause here. Oh, I went space that it doesn't really pause. The idea here is that we were able to, in any given study design, on the left, so you see the encounter schedule, i.e. visits or like ePro surveys, and within that encounter, it's about, everyone knows what building a study looks like. And all of that stuff around completing CRFs, queries, all of that is in place. But the reason I'm showing you this is not to highlight how the EDC works, but to show how we might get to what I'm about to talk about. So I'm scrolling through a few steps here, and I think here I wanted to show how a future encounter that's currently unavailable because we're not in the window, some sort of a CRF later is not available to be completed because participant has not been randomized yet. And I think most systems, from RedCaps to others, have built these checks into the schedules, but that's just a means to what we think is the actual end. So I think this is over now. Let's move on to the next one. So what's our goal? For us, the goal is to maintain full representation of the study itself, including protocols and analysis plans in one system. And I put that second part because the demo does not touch the more study design part of it. The goal is to do that. And to do this, we follow CDISC. We don't sort of apply CDISC at its face value. We use it much more to learn how best we could design the system to work in a way that is automatically is a big word. For example, actually, I'm just going to get into it. So building studies in conformance with CDASH, right? When we built our SAE reporting, SAE sort of full reporting module, instead of guessing and building something that we don't think is going to work, we make sure that all of our data collection is structured by CDASH SAE supplement, which then means we know that it's going to fit the E2B-R3 standard. Which all of that allows us to structure data in STTM at point of collection. So this is something we've been very excited about, at least for a long time, and maybe others do it as well, but it's everything we collect is automatically in STTM at point of collection, and if you change the data, it changes the STTM record to update it. So we don't deal with raw data to STTM, we go straight to STTM and try to cut out that phase. So when we just consented a participant there was this position record created in the export. The first two were important to get to the third one, informing the schedule of activities design on USTM principles. I don't know how far USTM has come in sort of explaining what they do, but I call it USTM principles because USTM obviously gives a lot of guidance about, well, best practice guidance on how to structure a study, schedule, a best practice structure in a study, and it goes into a lot of depth about all dependencies from your study to site to activities. What I want to get across is that when you looked at that schedule that I demoed, that thing operated on the basis of USDM-like principles. So we have transition rules, we have anchor points in the schedule, and the randomization thing I showed you, it wasn't really a manual check someone went and programmed. It checked whether a person has actually had a randomization event in the right encounter to be able to know that the treatment start is not ready to go. So all of that is to talk about this. So our long-term, and maybe not very long, no, we have to get there as fast as we can, vision of a vertically integrated system. I showed you the data collection side, but I'm starting at the very beginning. I'm starting at design and planning of a research study to the point of asking the research question and starting to build out your intervention type, population groups, activities, and encounters. If that's done in the same platform, that pretty much already predefines, well, automates the digitization of the study. And actually, obviously, that part is what is mostly in place. So we have a full representation of each study digitized, and not per study. It's the same digitization across all the studies we ran, which can be taken for granted, but it's a lot of work went into that. That will simplify study build. In many ways, I'll touch upon that domain expertise in a second, but ultimately it does simplify your study build. If the system that you use to design your CRFs is the same system where you designed which visits are going to happen in a study, that system does not need to integrate with something else. It can interpret that data itself and say, maybe create a shell of a visit and say, these are the forms that you'll be collecting. And then people can go in and modify it as they will with all the versioning put in place. This is the part I mentioned. So study build predefines data collection and structuring. So as I kind of demonstrated, and maybe there's another demo to be done there, but the build itself defines, is structured in a way that returns an STTM record. So the data collection is predefined at all types of data collections. It's very important to, I think, to me, important to mention that. So we mix your visit accountability with the ePros, with the CRFs, with the adverse events, with the SAEs and protocol deviations all in one. So the easiest way you can do that connection is if at the point of definition of what the study is about, those things are defined. So our data collection is predefined. Of course, allowing real-time monitoring. This talk is not about that, but obviously we consider this to be a great advantage to us as a company where we are a bit selective on the types of trials we work with. But in almost all of our studies, everything is collected in that one system, everything to everything. There are some cases where we have a central lab, and even when we have a central lab data coming in at the end of the study, we bring that data into the core ontology so that everything operates from the same location. And we also keep building all these different modules to make sure that we never have to go to another tool. Anything that touches research data does not go to another tool. That's at least the goal. For this group is probably the most, I think we renamed this many times of what that means. Preparing data for biostatistics. Maybe in this final form, it's meant to imply that, look, if we got all the previous steps done, and let's say we got 99% perfect STTM, 99% valid STTM, stats programmers and biostats people can take that and do their work. And this is where I wanted to bring back to the basic requirements. None of these things are, any tool we build in this flow is not an end in itself. It's meant to be a means to an end. And when we say monitoring, we don't mean it will necessarily monitor everything for you. It's more about it will create the conditions for you to do that job effectively, to remove the redundancies of each individual step, which is just the reality we operate in. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuance in these things. But here's us closing the loop. So if the STTMs themselves, let's say, but also the Adams analysis data sets, if they could be fed back to the platform where you do your design and planning, well, maybe you can close the loop there. Maybe that can inform every next study you design. In all of this, I really want to highlight it's not about the fact that you can take a bunch of research data and organize it in a way that it can inform someone designing a new study. It's about having it in all one place. So that's the important part here. And we have closed this loop, I think, in a very manual way for now, but we're actively moving towards fully closing the loop. So that every time our teams, our protocol writers sit down to write a study, they can access that information. And worth mentioning, maybe going too much into detail, and I think I'll talk about this later, it's not just about, so you can go to ct.gov, clinicaltrials.gov, and get all the outcome data. First of all, it's incomplete. You sort of have quite a biased selection, if you will, of those trials. But also, you don't have the time spent by this individual site to click a button to complete their CRF, right? It's that level of detail that we can inform back to planning. If the same system contains, granular data about the time it took for 10 different sites to perform an action, that information can be fed back to people who plan the study to say this site is better, this site is worse. And that's just one example. Okay, even better. This is about maintaining context throughout every part of the study. That's what it's all about. Traceability, we've talked so much about traceability today, but I hope it's assumed that what we're trying to do, make sure every step in the study is traceable. Creating instance access to the above for people who do that work. We do all sorts of user experience to make sure they can actually go and find that answer, and use that structured learning for future studies. And what does that look like? Building a brain. So I showed the slide earlier, and I showed it for effect, and I'm going to use it again for effect, and talk about, well, what if all of this could be informed by AI? I don't like that word. A large language model. So what do we mean by that? If I'm at the point of defining my research question, can I query all previous research outcomes that I have access to? At the point of iterating on the schedule of activities, obviously the top part is the basic stuff, building the study. But can I query all previous builds and ask the LLM, as we know, I'm going to skip through a lot of how LLMs work because we all know. Can I ask them about what happened in the last 10 metabolic health studies and what should I do now? Should the CRF be longer, shorter, or should I collect this way or not? Then at the point of collection, you're querying all previous findings and events. And at the point of closing it, you are querying all previous statistical findings to say, this is what I expect. Well, to help with all of the stuff we've been talking about. So, and that's the bottom line here. So can we train a greenfield rack-trained LLM assistant to do all of these jobs? Now, standalone, that sentence is crazy. Each of those actions is its own system. But if that LLM is trained on the reality, the granular reality that we uniquely have access to in an anonymized way, then it can be assistant for all those jobs. If you want to get a medical writing report, it'll probably know from previous studies the right type of formatting for that report. Eliminating redundancies across the life cycle, that's a big one. That's explained in one sentence. Compounding of knowledge with every study. I mean, that's just exciting. The more we run, the smarter it should get. That's the idea. And previously siloed AI solutions. So I built an LLM to do Medro coding. You can still build them, but now you're building them on a structured repository of knowledge. And the building itself is not that hard semantically. You get a product team together, engineers, designers, and build that thing. But now it's referencing everything else. All right, I rushed to the end there a little bit, but yeah, thank you. Yes?
Did you have any challenges implementing C-dash?
So technical challenges, not really. Did we have any challenges implementing C-dash? Obviously not technical challenges, but coordination challenges, yes. It's hard to get everyone in the study convinced that this is exactly how you're going to collect vital signs. You remember I mentioned the deployment team? We offload a lot of that knowledge to that team so they can inform the clinical operations people of this is a better way of doing it. And then we just flex it as we can. Like, we're not that restricted in C-dash really, as long as and if you remember, C-dash does not, it has its own variables. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but we don't store those variables specifically. We just point the STTM variable to the C-dash compliant data collection tool. Yes?
How many studies have you done so far, and do you already have an AI system which takes this structured data in?
How many studies? I think we've gone through various sort of studies, so end-to-end and only recruitment different part. I think we've done 100+ studies. End-to-end, we're coming up to 20-30. By end-to-end, I mean started with the protocol and finished with like analysis data. Have we integrated AI? So what is probably another talk is that we're focusing our LLM training on writing protocols and consent forms and PIS forms of writing structured long-form content, while we're building out the ontology of the study schedule of activities, which should then hopefully is plug and play.
So you talk about real-time monitoring.
Yeah.
And as Richard indicated, we might talk about months in terms of the kind of real-time that we might work with. Have you had any use cases where your real-time capability has delivered to customers something like on a daily basis, or what kind of granularity as a value proposition?
I'm gonna do something guilty, and I'm gonna invert that problem and say we, as our tech team, is now held responsible for like half daily kind of returns on information, because the standard kind of internally has shifted from we're gonna wait for something to happen versus it's just like, is it actually in the next few minutes or not? I mean, I think I don't have all the pitches of our like what we done with customers. I'll name a few. I mean, I'm supposed to say this. Sometimes we don't even report just how fast we recruited because people don't believe us. And on the other side, we closed the study. We got the analysis data sets ready at the same time as study lock, because the sponsor just needed it ASAP. So within, I think, 2 weeks of the queries weren't even like fully closed, the analysis could start, and it just happens. Yeah.
One question from the audience. You referred to low confidence at the beginning of the presentation, and they're asking if you could expand a little bit more on that particular point.
Yeah. So it's a question about why do we think there's low confidence in the industry's expectation of study, like running a research study? Well, first of all, it's what I hear from our client sort of interactions. it's a bit like us not reporting the actual, not giving like the full numbers. I think there's a lot of skepticism that I have to sometimes deal with about when we show our product, like until we show a demo, after we show a demo, like I didn't realize you had this because I do not have these expectations to be there. And I think it's a metaphorical statement about confidence. I mean, I think some of the people in our company could speak much more about how our commercial sort of experiences are, but I have a lot of confidence in some of the studies that we run. Like, how can we make this better? How can we make this better? There's so many redundancies, and I wouldn't blame anyone else if they thought this is just taking too long. That's the best I think I can answer that question. All right. Shall we? All right. Thanks, everyone.